Well, looks like I'm doing an unplanned video this morning because Donald Trump, according to the news, according to New York Times, says Trump proposes U.S. takeover of Gaza and says Palestinians should move. Reuters says Trump's Gaza plan for the Riviera of the Middle East triggers international condemnation. CNN says U.S. will take over Gazans and Palestinians should leave. So we're going to go ahead and read this particular article. I mean, they're really putting out articles all over the place. CNN doing multiples, Fox News doing multiples, everywhere about this. But this one covers, this article covers a lot of territory, so I'll go ahead and read it. President Donald Trump on Tuesday said the United States will take over the Gaza Strip, possibly with the help of American troops, while the Palestinians who live there should leave. A stunning proposal that would dramatically reorient the Middle East and subject a population of more than 1 million to further displacement. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip and we will do a job of it too, Trump said during a joint press conference alongside his Israeli counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, later describing his vision for the area as a new Riviera. We will own it and be responsible for dismantling all the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, he said. Asked whether he was willing to send U.S. troops to fill a security vacuum in Gaza, Trump did not rule it out. As far as Gaza is concerned, we'll do what is necessary. If it's necessary, we'll do that. We're going to take over the place. We're going to take over that piece that we're going to develop it, he said. Trump's comments are a remarkable assertion from a sitting president, particularly one who rose to political power in the United States through his criticisms of America's longest wars in the Middle East and pledges to return U.S. investment back to its citizens. They open a host of questions about how Trump's land grab would proceed, what its legal authorities would be, and who would pay for the effort. I do see a long-term ownership position. A long-term ownership position. You see where this is going, don't you? And I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. Really? Those of you who've been watching my videos, you know by now that the Yoel 3 war, the time of judgment upon the Gentiles, will be as a result of not the United States deporting the Gazans and Tyre and Zidon, but the Jews in Israel doing it. Trump told reporters in the East Room of the White House. He later said, this is not a decision made lightly. As if he's already made the decision. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land. He keeps talking about it belonging to the U.S. A U.S. territory. Developing and creating thousands of jobs was something that will be magnificent. There will be many in the region who oppose Trump's plan, despite his claim that all his interlocutors love it. Already, Egypt and Jordan have rejected the notion of accepting additional Palestinian refugees, wary of destabilization and fearful they will never be allowed back home. Trump suggested that was exactly what he envisioned, a future in Gaza that largely does not involve Palestinians. I don't think people should be going back to Gaza, Trump said in the Oval Office earlier in the day. I heard that Gaza has been very unlucky for them. They live like hell. They live like they're living in hell. Gaza is not a place for people to be living, and the only reason they want to go back, and I believe this strongly, is because they have no alternative. Lately, Or later, he added that Palestinians could be among those who returned to Gaza, but he was clear he did not envision the Strip as a permanent home for them. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there, he said. Trump, a former real estate developer, said during his press conference that he had studied the matter closely over a lot of months. Those comments followed his suggestion earlier that in the day that Gazans move to a new location provided by one or more nations in the Middle East. I mean, they're there because they have no alternative. What do they have? It is a big pile of rubble right now, Trump said moments before hosting Netanyahu for Oval Office talks. Trump's suggestion that Gaza leave the Strip permanently amounts to a provocative stance that will endear him to Israel's most conservative politicians, but is generally a non-starter for Israel's neighbors, who have said they are unwilling to accept a new Palestinian refugees from the enclave. At first on Tuesday, Trump framed the matter as a humanitarian one, saying it was impossible to believe that anyone would want to remain in the war-torn territory. Why would they want to return? The place has been held, Trump said, ignoring a reporter who cried out because it's their home. Instead of Gaza, he suggested that the Palestinians be provided a good, fresh, beautiful piece of land to live. Netanyahu, sitting alongside Trump in the Oval Office, smiled as Trump was speaking. The Israeli leader, under conflicted pressures domestically, was in Washington to ascertain exactly where Trump stands on the next phase of a ceasefire in Gaza. But Trump's dim view of Gaza as a permanent home for Palestinians was certain to provide grist for far-right allies of the Israeli leader, who have called upon Netanyahu to abandon the temporary truce that was struck last month. Two officials expressed puzzlement, concern, and pessimism in the immediate wake of Trump's unexpected remarks. It was rough, raw, hard to grasp and digest, one official said, adding that they need clarity and further development to become understood. A second official said the comments could jeopardize a fragile ceasefire deal in Gaza, stressing the profound implications such proposals have on the lives and dignity of Palestinian people as well as the broader Middle East. The reality remains that the 1.8 million people in Gaza would resist such an initiative and refuse to leave, the diplomat said. Saudi Arabia is unlikely to pursue peace under these circumstances, and other nations may reconsider their commitments to the Abraham Accords. Trump's comments, meanwhile, drew skepticism from congressional lawmakers, including some within his own party. We'll see what our Arab friends have to say about that. I think most South Carolinians would probably not be excited about sending Americans to take over Gaza, said South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. I think it might be problematic, but I'll keep an open mind. The American president's proclamation laying claim to Gaza as U.S. territory did not appear to convince Hamas to return immediately to the negotiating table. Trump said he was still determined to free the remaining hostages in Gaza. We'd like to get all of the hostages, and if we don't, it will just make us somewhat more violent, he said. Whatever that means. Trump has claimed credit for the hostages for ceasefire agreement struck in the days before he entered office. Even the officials in the outgoing administration acknowledged Trump's imminent arrival helped apply pressure on Israel and Hamas. Netanyahu, perhaps seeking to ingratiate himself with his host, praised Trump's efforts. I think President Trump added great force and powerful leadership to this effort, Netanyahu said at the Oval Office. But for all his prodding to get the deal inked, Trump will still need to oversee the remaining two phases of the three-phase plan. We'll see what happens. We're dealing with a very complicated people, but a deal can absolutely get done. There was plenty of Trump and Netanyahu to discuss beyond immediate matters of the ceasefire agreement. There is the prospect of a broader normalization of relations between Israel and its Arab neighbors, principally Saudi Arabia, that former President Joe Biden had been pursuing before October 7, 2023 attacks. Trump, who openly pines for a Nobel Peace Prize, may see his opportunity as such a pursuit, which could transform the entire Middle East and create a new bulwark against Iran, a common foe to Jerusalem and Riyadh. It's not clear how his comments Tuesday will be helpful. In a statement on X following Trump's remarks, the Saudi Foreign Ministry restated its long-held position that it will not commit to normalization with Israel without full guarantees for a Palestinian state. Saudi Arabia will continue its relentless efforts to establish an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital and will not establish diplomatic relations with Israel without that, the statement said. Whether Netanyahu is interested in diplomacy or whether he instead sees Trump's arrival in Washington as a moment to take decisive action against Iran, potentially even taking out its nuclear program, remains to be seen. Ahead of his arrival, there was speculation that Netanyahu could push the talks to take Trump's temperature on a direct strike, seizing a moment when Iran's proxies have been decimated. Iran's nuclear ambitions appeared to be accelerating while he had friendlier ties to Washington. Before Netanyahu arrived, Trump signed a directive authorizing a tough approach to Iran meant to prevent the country from obtaining nuclear weapons while warning of obliteration should he be assassinated by Tehran's operatives. Trump said he left options for his team on how to respond should he fall prey to an Iranian assassination plot. I have left instructions, Trump said. If they do it, they will be obliterated. Netanyahu's visit lasted several hours and included a joint press conference, all meant to demonstrate Trump's solidarity with Israel. I'm done with this article. And I want to point out to you that I have done many videos where I've talked about how the great Yoel 3 war is going to happen, what is going to trigger it. These 4 videos was all about the Yoel 3 war, these 4 videos here. And I've done many videos where I've talked about the Yoel 3 war and what's going to cause it. I would suggest that you watch each one of these videos. Israel prepares last details for a great Middle East war of Yoel 2 and 3, day of wrath upon the Gentiles, because that's exactly what's going to trigger it. Egypt and Syria threaten war with Israel. The great Yoel 3 war continued. Israel and Jerusalem are the bait, and the Gentiles are falling into the Yoel 3 trap. Blood in the sky, blood in the earth, Yoel 2, verse 30 through 32. And it also has some of Yoel 3 in it. So now, for the whatever time it has been, I will go to Yoel 3 again. Now, in Yoel 3, it says that the Jews are going to deport. Well, let's just read it. In the day and time when I shall bring again the captives of Yehuda, Jerusalem, the Jews of Jerusalem. You know, the descendants of those who were massacred, pillaged by the Romans 70 AD. 70, the year 70 on the Roman calendar. These descendants are going to be brought back first. Well, they are there right now. He's going to gather the Goy, the Gentiles, and bring them down to the valley of judgment. The valley where Jehovah shall judge the Gentiles. He will judge for his people, for his possession, his property. You heard how Donald Trump wants to turn Gaza into his property. So what we're seeing is what Donald Trump is saying is flying in the face of the words of Jehovah in the prophets. My property, my possession, my inheritance, Israel, whom they have scattered among the Gentiles and made a deal, divided, distributed. Leveled his land, the Arets. They cast lots for my people. They have given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Tyre and Zidon and the coast of Pelesheth. Now, what is that? It is what used to be the Philistines. Okay, and it is located in the southwestern coast of Canaan along the Mediterranean Sea. That would be Gaza. Will you repay Jehovah for bringing Yehuda back to Jerusalem? Is that what you're going to do? If you do, swiftly, not slowly, and speedily, with great haste, will I return your recompense upon your own head. Because you took my silver and gold and have carried in your temples my pleasant things, the children of Yehuda and the children of Jerusalem have you sold to the Greeks, that you might remove them far distant land from their border. And they did. I will raise them up out of the place where you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. So the very thing that you had the Romans do to the Jews, he will do to you. Gaza and southern Lebanon. I will raise them up out of the place where you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head, and I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hands of the children of, not the United States of America, no, and to the children of Yehuda, and they shall deport them to the Sabians, to a people afar off. Jehovah has spoken, and as I have told you over and over and over, this is going to cause the great Middle East war that is going to cause the great nuclear war. That's what's going to happen. Or is the world leaning in that direction? Yes. But somebody needs to explain to Donald Trump the scriptures. Because if the United States takes possession of that land, the United States become cursed. Like the people who live in Gaza right now. The prophet Yoel says who must take ownership of that property. It's very, very clear. Now, to all people living in the United States of America. You need to watch this carefully and prepare yourselves for a curse in case he actually tries to take ownership of that land. The land does not belong to the United States of America. You can see it right here in the words of the prophets that Jehovah has given ownership of that land, Gaza, to the Jews of Jerusalem. Any deviation from the words of the prophets is going to bring about a curse. So a warning to the U.S. government, a warning to the people of the United States of America, a warning to senators, members of the House of Representatives. Pay attention.